Good morning and welcome, friends, to our Sunday morning meeting. This lodge, as well as many others, meet on Sundays for the discussion of a particular topic presented by a student. The similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching is the bond that holds United Lodge of Theosophists members together. This is an association of students who want to study real philosophy as brought out by H.P.B. and William Quine Judge in the 19th century, which is still continuing on. The effort is endless, and as long as there are sincere and real students of Theosophy who stay with the Master's message, it cannot be contaminated. The students are scattered all around the world, and they all present Theosophy pure and simple. Hence then, this unity among theosophical associates is the bond, as well as the unity that promotes brotherhood, because that is a real aspect of life, universal aspect of life, because brotherhood is a reality in nature, and hence as students continue disseminating this philosophy in furtherance of universal brotherhood, it will eventually be established largely to include many people of all races, creeds, sex, and condition, and hence we're looking forward to the establishment of centers with members that follow this philosophy as is given without changing it. Today's talk is on service through knowledge and works, and the reading comes from the Bhagavad Gita. The announcement is for ULT LA. They're having a gathering and a study session August 9 to 11, and we are all invited to join them. Further information is on their website. The Gita, Chapter 3, Devotion through the right performance of action. Arjuna, if according to thy opinion, O giver of all that men ask, knowledge is superior to the practice of deeds, why then dost thou urge me to engage in an undertaking so dreadful as this? Thou, as it were, with doubtful speech, confusest my reason. Wherefore, choose one method amongst them by which I may obtain happiness, and explain it unto me. Krishna, it hath before been declared by me, O sinless one, that in this world there are two modes of devotion, that of those who follow the Sankhya or speculative science, which is the exercise of reason in contemplation, and that of the followers of the Yoga school, which is devotion in the performance of action. A man enjoyeth not freedom from action, from the non-commencement of that which he hath to do, nor doth he obtain happiness from a total abandonment of action. No one ever resteth a moment inactive. Every man is involuntarily urged to act by the qualities which spring from nature. He who remains inert, restraining the senses and organs, yet pondering with his heart upon objects of sense, is called a false pietist or bewildered soul. But he who, having subdued all his passions, performeth with his active faculties all the duties of life, unconcerned as to their result, is to be esteemed. Do thou perform the proper actions. Action is superior to inaction. The journey of thy mortal frame cannot be accomplished by inaction. All actions performed other than as sacrifice unto God make the actor bound by action. Abandon then, O son of Kunti, all selfish motives, and in action perform thy duty for him alone. He who, unattached to the fruit of his actions, performeth such actions as should be done, is both a renouncer of action and a devotee of right action, not he who liveth without kindling the sacrificial fire and without ceremonies. Know, O son of Pandu, that what they call sannyas, or forsaking of action, is the same as yoga, or the practice of devotion. No one without having previously renounced all intentions can be devoted. Action is said to be the means by which the wise man, who is desirous of mounting to meditation, may reach unto them. So cessation from action is said to be the means for him who hath reached to meditation. When he hath renounced all intentions, and is devoid of attachment to action in regard to objects of sense, then he is called one who hath ascended to meditation. He should raise the self by the self. Let him not suffer the self to be lowered, for self is the friend of self, and in like manner self is its own enemy. Self is the friend of the man who is self-conquered. So self, like a foe, hath enmity to him who is not self-conquered. The self of the man who is self-subdued and free from desire and anger is intent on the supreme self in heat and cold, in pain and pleasure, in honor and ignominy. The man who hath a spiritual knowledge and discernment, who standeth upon the pinnacle, and hath subdued the senses, to whom gold and stone are the same, is said to be devoted. And he is esteemed among all who, whether amongst his friends and companions, in the midst of enemies, or those who stand aloof or remain neutral, with those who love and those who hate, and in the company of sinners or the righteous, is of equal mind. Now today's talk, service through knowledge and works.
Thank you. Friends, we just heard the reading from the Gita on the importance of performing our duty right and unselfishly. Mr. Judge calls duty the royal talisman. Duty and service are related words. They both should be based on sacrifice and the right performance of action. By the wrong kind of actions, we produce the ill effects we experience. A current happening that is distasteful to us may well be exactly what we once made efforts to secure for ourselves. Having obtained these finite things we so ardently desired, we find that they produce more pain than pleasure. They keep on producing what the farmer calls a volunteer crop. This is because every desire of man is formulated by thoughts that coalesce with elemental beings. These beings are psychic embryos that have a life and nature of their own, quite apart from our use of them. The elementals have no mind, no conscience, no sense, except as what we impart to them by our desires, our thoughts, our motives. Combinations of elementals make up our 4 law principles, which are out here on the life, our body, astral and physical, and our karma manas, which is our feelings, our personality, our motives are involved in that too. So elementals are very much alive. Their life, so far as it affects us, is exactly what we have taught them. The mind we are using is made up of these elementals. So are our desires and feelings. The feelings are over here. The astral nature in us. Our thoughts and impulses are the ideas we once impressed on these younger brothers of ours. Our willing servants then, almost our masters now. The elementals do not suffer from the degradation we have inflicted on them, but we do. Our personality is that totality of elementals with which we are in union during the physical life as the human being. These elementals are souls. They form our lower sheaths, our lower nature. These 4, the lower nature, the 4 down here. We are constantly in communion with those lower souls, which are lesser intelligences than ourselves. They are not corrupted. They have not corrupted us. We have corrupted them. Our children now, we have trained up these elementals in the ways they should not go. And now they will not depart from us or leave us in peace while we seek communion with higher souls, the Mahatmas, the Masters. But we cannot enter into conscious communion with our higher self, the Masters, the Mahatmas. This is the higher self up here too. This triangle is part of us too, but we have to reach up to get it. Service starts with ceasing to think, feel, desire, and act personally, and with employing our lower nature impersonally. Impersonality. Means just that from a negative perspective. But positively speaking, impersonality means universality. Universality is employing our faculties here and now for the good of all beings. The Masters have the whole of nature for their object. The Masters are full 7 principal beings because they employ all their faculties for one purpose and one purpose only, the orderly progression of beings. There are several principles with these really acting in charge at all times. We too are seven principal beings, because we have the Atma, the Buddhi Manas, which is the higher mind. But we employ four of our principles very largely for selfish, personal, temporary, and destructive purposes. The beings which make up these four principles know no better, but we do. So, service, duty, action should be one and the same. One motive, one thought, one feeling. The elevation of that stream of beings in which are comprised alike the four kingdoms we know, which are mineral, plant, animal, and human, as well as the elemental and the superhuman kingdoms. Little by little, the lower principles are transformed, and nature ceases to be our jailer, our enemy. By being a friend to all beings become our friends. Our higher nature needs no reformation. Our lower nature does, and we alone can reform it. Enter the service of the higher nature by reforming the lower nature. The Gita says, raise the self by the self, or Arjuna's. That's what the first speaker read. Whomever does this performs the highest service, which includes all forms of service. Service is rendered in many different ways. By work in the lodge, by spreading literature, by explaining the doctrines and doing away with misconceptions, by contributing money to be used in the work, by constituting oneself a loyal unit if ability and time be lacking, and chiefly always by acquiring a knowledge of theosophical doctrines so as to be better able to give a clear answer to inquiry as to questions about theosophical literature and doctrines. Any work that is sincerely done with good motive and to the best of one's ability is good theosophical work. Very clear and unequivocal statements are to be found in letters from the masters of the wisdom, which show that their chief object is service through a spiritual regeneration and moral transformation of human individuals. The great ones who constitute the deathless race of divines, having realized all this, live by the power of that bliss of higher contentment. They are free and emancipated beings, free from the bondage of personal limitations, and emancipated from the crushing power of material existence. Their compassionate will makes manifest the knowledge which enabled them to silence the roar of the beast and the warble of the bird, and to chant the chant of power in the temple of their bodies. Students of Theosophy feel grateful for for the knowledge which teaches them the art of holding war against the lower self and the demonical nature. In their zest, they earnestly begin to attend study classes and lectures, and read and even ponder over journals and books. Study of the philosophy is necessary, since practice follows theory, and one must learn the laws of warfare for success in the battlefield of life. However, says the voice of the silence, to live to benefit mankind is the first step. To practice the 6 glorious virtues is the second. The very simplicity of this injunction makes us blind to its profound lesson. In our strong desire to grow and evolve and become free and emancipated like the adepts, we often seek abnormal and superphysical power and faculties. By demanding knowledge in increasing quantity, instead of focusing on the path to greatness that has already been shown to us. Sometimes we're told, I want to evolve so that I can help. It is forgotten that each one of us has already evolved in some measure and to some extent. But we must clearly understand that service of humanity is the first step, and that the gaining of knowledge depends not on the desire to serve in the future, but on the actual service in the present. The higher knowledge is the knowledge of that omnipresent spirit in us, which is ourselves, also called the Master Soul, the Universal Soul. The voice of the silence tells us to live in that Master as its ray in thee. Live in thy fellows as they live in it. Reflection on this will convince us that study and service are but 2 aspects of the same fact. We serve ourself when we serve our fellow men. We learn the wisdom of that self through such service. The study of our philosophy but gives us improved limbs and faculties of service. Such study is not fruitful if the existing limbs and faculties of service are not put to proper and sufficient use. Service is the method, the spiritual exercise, which strengthens the spiritual muscle, sharpens the spiritual senses, and makes the acquisition of added spiritual knowledge possible. In the failure to do service is to be found the key reason for unsatisfactory progress. The dire heresy of separateness. The dire heresy of separateness is the sin of this black age of Kali Yuga. Yet it is not devoid of virtue and capacity if we learn how to use its nature. Too many of us learn to think we are different from and superior to others and their religions. As such men and women, we contact the glorious teachings of Theosophy. Without meaning to do so, and even without being cognizant of it, we slip into the same attitude in our love for and loyalty to Theosophy and the particular mouthpiece through which we heard its divine message. By sheer force of habit, some come to regard Theosophy as superior to all other studies and to all other activities of life. Attendance at large activities comes to be regarded as superior to attention to be paid to business and life's other duties. The heresy of separateness has tracked us into our new pursuit. On account of this self-same sin of the age, we learn from our childhood the virtue of getting on. The power to acquire and to possess comes to birth in us. Systematically, we learn to foster the power to compete with others, to nourish the desire to defeat them, to nurture the capacity to hold on to our success, and to stick fast to our possessions. Once again, by sheer force of habit, in our new theosophical life, we use unconsciously to ourselves the acquired facility to acquire more. The unconscious desire to possess new knowledge, new faculties, new powers to make us blind to the great truth. That is, life is built up by the sacrifice of the individual to the whole. Each cell in the living body must sacrifice itself to the perfection of the whole. When it is otherwise, disease and death enforce the lesson. It is not that we are unwilling to sacrifice or that we are unwilling to serve. The difficulty is that sin of separateness has made divisions in our own inner nature. Our field of service is so limited that we fail to see that life is whole and indivisible. The first lesson then is to recognize that practical theosophy is the only true theosophy, and that is the practice of theosophy and the whole of life, not to be separated from the point of view of the immortal ego, which we are. To begin to serve everywhere, all the time, enables us to perceive the fact that to give is to get. Giving in service must come first in our spiritual life. We must not ask what Theosophy can and the masters can do for us, but what we can do for them. Let us not go to the large meetings to get, but to give. Give by speech or by silence. Give by thought or by feeling. Give in money or in kind. Give in time or in work. The energy of sacrifice builds, constructs, sustains. We are preparing ourselves for that time of choice when we, in self-consciousness, shall elect ourselves to be one of the great renouncers. To enter the path of the great service in full self-consciousness when our hour strikes is dependent on our treading the path of little services faithfully and persistently, and all the while do this. To serve with hands and head and heart. To serve in sunshine or in storm. to serve in success or in failure, to serve all actively in unbroken continuity is to earn the reward of exclaiming, "For others' sake, this reward I yield." To be energized by the Spirit all the time, that makes life whole and powerful. To give what we have, that makes life richer and still more bountiful. To sacrifice what we are, that makes life divine. To offer the gift of sacrifice in every word spoken, in every feeling felt, in every deed done, and every thought reflected is to know that the law of brotherhood is the law of nature, is to prepare ourselves for the great realization that we are not only part of nature, but we are nature itself. To serve all the time, energized by the light of the One, is the effort in which all should be engaged. To form the habit of that alertness to give one's very best without the hope of reward is a necessary qualification to be cultivated. To prepare ourselves in the art of giving is to make ourselves ready for the path of holiness. It is sometimes not fully understood that we learn as we teach, we gain as we give, we grow in selflessness as we sacrifice. So the first virtue is in personal service. To learn from all and to teach all. To seek out him who knows less than thou is also to seek him who is to give thee birth in the hall of wisdom. If we, these are words from the voice of the silence. If masters are the servants of humanity, the service of those they serve is to earn for ourselves their blessing. The second virtue is to give one's very best. Service of humanity should be the motor power of our theosophic efforts. The third virtue is the discernment of the right kind of service. Right service brings us the opportunities of learning and teaching, where and how to give, why and what to get. What is the special nature of our own Dharma, all has to be grasped. Discrimination and dispassion Discrimination and dispassion are best acquired on the path of service. So in personality, giving our best with discriminative dispassion, we see the self in all. Neither by study, nor by devotion, nor by philanthropy can this be completely done, but the three merged into one reveals the path of service. Study, devotion, philanthropy. We have study, devotion, philanthropy as the path of service. The only path recognized by the masters of Theosophy. Real service is, like true sacrifice, both spontaneous and impersonal. While none is able to change the karma of others, we might help lighten their karmic burden without actually doing their duty, keeping in mind the Gita's warning that doing the duty of another is full of danger. A study of the voice of the silence reveals the superlative beauty of renunciation in choosing to forego nirvanic bliss in order to aid those who are groping for the way, the oneness of all, is not merely a theosophical phrase, but an eternal truism, the meaning of which must be translated into action. Not only may one truly give himself in real service by helping those who suffer, but by aligning oneself with all progressive, educational, economic, and philosophical movements which have as their guiding principle the leading of humanity into a calmer and fuller life in which divine possibilities are developed. As for material wealth, the only real evil of wealth lies in the consuming desire for the things that wealth can buy, in the self-identifying attachment and bondage to objects of the material world. Where the heart is centered, there is the man, is the quotation we hear about. Is it not evident that so long as the mind and desire are directed to the joys of matter, the gates to the kingdom of heaven must remain forever closed? So with the kingdom of knowledge, true spiritual enlightenment must ever elude the grasp of the lower personal mind. The self of matter and the self of spirit can never meet, says the voice of the silence. Just as the symbolism of a dream loses its reality as we near the plane of waking consciousness, so with spiritual perceptions. The more analytical we become, the more strenuous the effort to translate high themes into words. The dimmer those perceptions grow. Things of the spirit cannot be grasped by the hand of matter, nor can they be encompassed by the limited mind. Most of us, in one way or another, materialize the spirit, neglecting the unobtrusive opportunities that are daily offered to us for soul growth. One seeking spiritual knowledge must exercise his intuition, raising himself to a new focus in a higher plane, and gain his knowledge there. The real failure of our age does not lie in lack of effort on the part of students of metaphysics, but in their attempt to drag high teachings down to the plane of materialistic analysis. Failure lies in a low position assumed. Truly, says the poet, quote, not failure, but low aim is a crime, close quote. Few are those able to free themselves from the coils of the serpent of materialism and transcend the lethal influences that rise from earthly thinking. Fewer still are willing to undertake the task of elevating their natures, of directing their efforts toward the attainment of virtue, before demanding detailed explanations of sacred truths. Yet it is just this lack of moral culture, the paralyzing effect of low motivation, that bars our entrance to the kingdom of knowledge. It takes a very wise man to do good works without danger of doing incalculable harm. It is not the spirit of self-sacrifice or of devotion or of desire to help that is lacking, but the strength to acquire knowledge and power and intuition so that the deeds done shall really be worthy of the Buddha Christ spirit. Theosophists are obliged to work in the world unceasingly, and very often in doing this to make serious mistakes, and as do all workers who are not embodied redeemers. Good works are necessary. Only these cannot be rightly accomplished without knowledge. To double activity of learning and doing is most necessary. We have to do good, we have to do it rightly with knowledge. In each one there is a considerable to profound body of knowledge stored in memory, of which only a small portion is in use at any given moment. The lower mind, activated by techniques, habitude, and desires, runs unchecked, as is somewhat reflected in the dream state. However, if we pass on to a study of the spiritual life within, it will be found that the aspect of mind there in use, there is little to be parallel the lower modes of thought, and therefore knowledge is accessible to a far greater degree, but access to the knowledge requires a withdrawal from the distractions of physical plane through practice, technique, and habitude. Practice is the frame of procedure in daily routine. Technique refers to the faculty acquired in the performance of a given task, and is that which enables one to use the hands with ease while releasing the creative energy in the mind. Habitude expresses the sustained flow of that very ease which produces efficiency. There is need for these three in the outer life, but the asceticism of the inner life is in no way attainable in its true form without them. Patanjali's yoga aphorisms are devoted to the training of the whole being. They are concerned with the method through which spiritual strength and mental balance can be achieved. The conscious process of thought partakes of the vigor of imagination, the king faculty. The power of the thinker to gain the knowledge sought increases or declines with the nature of his motive. Tinged with selfishness, the scope is narrowed. With altruism, nature itself cooperates and is said to yield up her secrets. For eventually he passes the boundaries of his own storage of knowledge and draws upon universal mind. He may not be conscious of the source of his widened mental resources, but by drawing upon the universal mind, he has put himself in rapport with those who watch over the spiritual progress of humanity. To such knowledge as Krishna had, as Jesus had, and as H.P. Blavatsky had, there are three doors, which each one has for himself to open, for they are within himself. The first is the door of the mind, the door of the open mind, which recognizes its own ignorance and is not only willing to learn, but desirous of learning, and knows that anybody who comes within its kin may perchance be the keeper of the keys of the gates of gold. An open mind is the first of the doors by which a man can reach into the recesses of his own consciousness and may come to the realization of his own immortality. The second door is the door of the pure heart. That is, what knowledge a man gains must be used by him the best he knows how. The man who has an open mind is on the beginning of the road to unselfish thinking. The third door is an eager intellect to test out his own mental content, to keep sifting his own thoughts, his own ideas, his own knowledge, his own actions, his own feelings, his own relations to others, to wash them all clean. By living the right kind of life instead of abusing life and abusing our own lesser informed brothers, the kingdoms below man, that is our less informed brothers, by taking a motherly attitude toward all beings, a fatherly attitude toward them, a brotherly attitude toward them, a Christ-like attitude toward them, the doors of intuition are opened. And intuition is all we know of the power that Krishna and Christ had. Open for the remaining time we have for questions and comments. It says also in the Bhagavad Gita, all actions performed other than as sacrifice of the Supreme make the actor bound by action. So all of our action is sacrificial in nature to the Supreme. Comment or question?
Well, you listed at the bottom of the board, study
devotion
and philanthropy.
Philanthropy, yes.
So in order to actually achieve that, you said that we have to have an open mind.
Mm-hmm. Pure heart.
Mm-hmm. Open.
Eager intellect.
Mm-hmm.
And an eager intellect. The three working together. Yeah.
So the studying the secret doctrine, plus all the other books, Isis, Key, and Voice of the Silence, and then add to that the ocean, the Gita, universal Theosophy, all of the letters. This actually compilation is quite large. There are those who, just by looking at the literature, know what its inner meaning is. So obviously somewhere on the way, on this path, those higher inner senses are activated, enabling the student to get a hold of a larger amount of knowledge. And when you really think about it, everything is in us. We're just activating it to kind of flow through. You said that the mind field is Mahat?
Mm-hmm.
Not Atma, right?
The mind field? Oh, the Buddhi Manas you're talking about? That
Mahat is the universal aspect.
Mahat, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mahat is the universal aspect.
Right.
But in the triadic designation you have made, Buddhi and manas have to work together
Exactly.
in order for that intuitive power to be active in us.
Right. In other words, this is universal, right? And it's there for us to participate in if we reach up and try. And the Buddhi manas part is the part that we need to try to activate, correct? Well, it's already active, but we have to reach up to it.
I think HPV refers to the inner senses being activated through that list you gave up there.
Mm-hmm.
The paramitas,
Right.
the philanthropy, which is love and charity, obviously, is the philanthropic part. Devotion then is devotion to your higher self, but in reality, devotion to the other is what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the study is not for ourselves, it's to learn it, to assimilate it, and to give it as we found it.
Right.
And that also brings another comment to the forefront, that all the students all over the world are simply in association in learning this philosophy, and none of them claim to be authority. So in other places, organizations and organizational
Hierarchy.
priority
Yeah.
comes to the forefront, where the students are actually told what to do.
Yeah.
Whereas in the ULT, that's just open-ended.
We're all
left
students.
to assimilate as best
Yeah.
we can, and then of course we help one another in that endeavor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and that brought to mind when you were talking, we always have this channel of communication to the higher within us. Well, we're not do something like that. That small voice of consciousness we hear, that small voice is always right.
Well,
And it's not telling us what not, it tells us what not to do.
but not what to.
But we have to reach up. We have to, this little guy here wants to be in charge at all times. We're going to say, okay, this is what we want to be in charge. That's our individuality, the Buddhi manas.
I think our society lacks quietude
Of
in
course.
this 21st century. We need to teach our children the benefit to sit quietly and imbibe their soul, which is really lacking in this age of video games, TV, the constant chatter that's going on around us to keep oneself in solitude and quietude becomes necessary if we're going to truly hear the inner voice.
Absolutely.
Quietude is necessary. It's imperative that we learn how to become quiet, because concentration without it is not possible either. So in that statement made everywhere, quietude also has another aspect to it. I think this is in Mr. Wadia's writings, where he says that silence and keeping a vow go hand in hand, where discriminative powers are established and one knows what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do as a result of that also. That calmness and quietude is necessary, not to be reactive to situations.
Absolutely. Knowledge encompasses exactly what you're talking about. In particular in the West, we think we have to be doing something all the time. Every second has got to be accounted for. But there are studies that have been made in schools. I think in the Baltimore schools they had studies to this effect. What is called meditation, which is the best we can think of in this West, is to have a quiet period where if a person is disruptive, a child is disrupted in class, they don't punish them, they send them down for meditation. And they have to sit there for a while and quietly think about whatever they're doing or whatever they need to think about for a while. and it's shown that works.
Yeah.
And that's just one indication. In the East, it's pretty standard. This theater understands that there is quiet time that is done this way, but we don't have emphasis on that in general in the West, and we really need to do that. I think we're kind of running out of time here, so we're going to call it a day for this talk. Next Sunday, service through knowledge. I'm sorry, no, it's imagination. Next Sunday is imagination. Join us then.